Good afternoon. So a very warm welcome to Georgia Tech. My name is Tim Lewin. I am the Executive Director of our Strategic Energy Institute here, and it is such a privilege for us to welcome this great group of energy leaders onto our campus. Clearly, there's a lot of exciting things happening in Georgia, and as a state institution, we are, at Georgia Tech, we're deeply appreciative of this partnership that we have with our state, with our city, with our state government, the federal government. It's clear that we are at the center of a very exciting developing ecosystem in the region. Having our Secretary of Energy here is a great opportunity to just quickly highlight Georgia Tech's multi-decade partnership with the Department of Energy across all the DOE mission spaces. So whether that's batteries or electric vehicles or hydrogen or nuclear or carbon capture or policy, we have over 1,000 people on this campus working across this whole value chain, engaging with our community and engaging with policymakers. And we're working hard, in addition to the work that we're doing on R&D, we're working really hard to make our campus itself a living lab. For example, we have a really innovative urban microgrid in collaboration with Georgia Power. And this building itself is a pretty cool building. You know, this is probably the most environmentally efficient advanced building in the world. It makes all the power it consumes. Whether or not you need to use the bathrooms, make sure you check them out before you leave. They're not connected to the sewer. We recycle all of our water. All the wood is reclaimed. So just really trying to, in addition to the work we're doing, really trying to make this campus itself a living lab. I also just want to highlight that, you know, Georgia Tech starts a lot of companies, and many of the companies are very successful. Recent companies are focused on exactly the themes of this workshop that we're having, this roundtable that we're having here today. I just want to highlight too, Sila Nanotech. Today, it's an energy storage battery company. Today, valued at over $3 billion. Or Smart Wires, a grid electrification company, valued at over $100 million. And I'd also like to note that ARPA-E played a really important role in kickstarting both of those companies. Just the run of show for this afternoon. In just a moment, I'm going to be introducing our Atlanta Mayor, Andre Dickens, and then followed by our U.S. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. And then following the Secretary, we're going to welcome to the stage our co-hosts, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Drew Kann and Greg Bluestein, as well as Ali Zaidi from the White House. And then afterward, so there's going to be moderated time for Q&A, we'll have time for questions. And then afterward, everyone is welcome to stay and mingle for a reception that we're having out in the lobby. So with that, let me introduce our mayor, Andre Dickens. He's the 61st mayor of Atlanta, proud native of Atlanta, a product of many Georgia entities and Atlanta entities. He's a product of Atlanta Public Schools, a Georgia Tech chemical engineer, and a master's in public administration from Georgia State. So, Mayor, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks you all. Good afternoon, and go Jackets.
All right.
Yeah, got to get the good stuff out of the way right off the bat. When I came in, I saw Ron Russo, who was my advisor and the chairman of the chemical engineering department when I was here at Georgia Tech. So it's good to see so many friends here. Secretary, it is great to have you in our city. We thank you for being here. Secretary Granholm and her team are traveling across the Southeast in electric vehicles to be able to, share the ideas and the climate and infrastructure policies of the Biden administration and her department. And they're going across the region of America, including Atlanta, to be able to talk about all the good things that they're doing that will benefit the city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, this great southeastern region, but of course the entire United States of America. We are honored and we are thankful for the relationship that we have with this administration. The Biden administration has been great allies to us. And again, as mentioned by Tim, this building is special. The Kendeda Building is a one-of-a-kind institution. It is an institution that is the largest, the greenest building on any college campus in the United States. And so that's a legacy that we have here. And I've been honored to be a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket and sat in these seats during a debate when I ran for mayor. So these are some good seats for me, y'all. So I'm going to be happy about being a part of this panel, and let's have a great time discussing how we're going to have clean energy and sustainability in this nation. Thank you.
I go up. Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. So glad to be here in Atlanta. So glad to be with you all. So glad to be joined by my colleague, Ali Zaidi, who is the President's Climate Advisor. And before we get to the panel part, which I'm really looking forward to, I'm going to do a bit of a Prezi PowerPoint to sort of set the stage for what the Department of Energy has been working on in light of this whole Invest in America agenda that has been adopted since the president took office. When I say Invest in America agenda, I'm talking about 3 laws, basically. The first one is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which I'm sure you've heard about. The second one is the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'm sure you've heard about. And the third one is the Chips and Science Act. Those are way too many words all together, so we just kind of put it together with Investing in America, the Investing in America agenda. So what is the Department of Energy focused on this Investing in America agenda? We are laser focused. Notice I have lasers here because we just in December created fusion. At least we were able to, for those of you who are engineers and who know what I'm talking about, we fused atoms together to get more energy out than coming in. And so nuclear fusion is a future-based source of energy. But right now, we're really focused on the goals at hand, which are 100% clean electricity in this nation by 2035 and net zero by 2050, all right? Those are the goals, the big, hairy, audacious goals that are keeping us up at night. And so what does this mean? Let me just say, just a base setter. There's a lot of people in the country who aren't sure why we need to go clean. I know those who are here probably know why, but clearly affordability and reliability are really important. And when I say affordability, if you look at this is yellowish line. That is solar, jing, 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 jing. And the other line below it is wind. These are the cheapest forms of energy. The president is obsessed with lowering costs for people. So one key reason why we should focus on clean is to be able to be focused on affordability. A second reason is because of security. I mean, no one can weaponize access to the sun and access to the wind, right? So why were you laughing? What happened? You're laughing at Putin? Okay, you guys are tough. All right. All I'm saying is, you know what he did to Europe, right? He weaponized access to energy. And we're saying in the United States, we don't want countries whose values we don't share to be holding us hostage, whether it's in supply chains or in actual fuel. We want to be able to generate the means to our own energy security, homegrown energy, and that's why we should be going clean. Third reason is because of jobs. So this study from the International Finance Corporation says that this clean energy sector is going to be worth $23 trillion globally by 2030. That's just a massive amount of money. And so the question is, which countries are going to be able to go after these technologies? And in the past, up to this point, and the president is actually giving a speech today about Bidenomics, where in the past we had sat back and let other countries corner the market on these technologies. It's why China came in and cornered the market on solar panels. Right now they've got a huge footprint in batteries for electric vehicles. But the president said, no more. We are going to make these products and the supply chains in the United States. We're going to stamp them made in America. We're going to use them here. We're going to make them with American workers. And so that is a reason why we want to see economic opportunity here and the jobs created as a result of clean energy. So those are our goals. Let me just start with bringing down costs for people. I've been visiting families who've had their houses weatherized and who have moved into the direction of electrifying appliances. This is just a little mashup.
I get gas bills that were more than my house payment.
She was literally, I teased her, she was trying to heat the neighborhood. The ductwork in the attic was disconnected, she had no insulation.
So would you recommend weatherization to other people?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, it's a game changer.
We decided we want to move to induction. It's just, it's more efficient,
Yeah.
it's safer for the kids, and yeah, we love it.
Now, you have more than one heat pump.
Correct, yeah. So this summer we installed a central heat pump.
Why did you need another heat pump?
We wanted to stop using our oil.
How much you're saving now as a result of the heat pumps?
Yeah, it's about $3,500 a year that we're saving.
I noticed my bill, it was like, it usually run like 180-ish.
So you started at 180 and you ended at 86?
Yes.
So it cut it more than in half?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing.
Electric bill down from like 210 to under $70.
Wow, cut more than in half.
Yes, ma'am. Water bill, because of the work they did, from $170. Now I'm paying below $60.
Oh my gosh.
Gas bill, because our heat is central heat and air, but the heat port is controlled by gas.
Yeah.
From $120, and we're down below $70.
Oh my gosh.
Even in the winter.
Cutting all three of those for that family who we just met yesterday in Athens, Georgia, $280 a month that they cut off of their energy bills. And they're on a fixed income. So just saying that bringing down the price of fueling one's home for real people is serious business. We also want not just to do energy efficiency, but to generate as well. Solar is the cheapest form of energy available. And thanks to the President's Inflation Reduction Act, this Investing in America agenda, you can get 30% off of solar panels. We want to make it easy. The average lifetime savings unlock $9,000. I'm going to go quickly here. We figured out, this is DOE. DOE is this great science organization. We have 17 national labs, scientists doing all sorts of stuff, working with Georgia Tech. But one of the things that I love that we're doing is trying to figure out how to embed solar in different types of materials. So how to make solar bendable, for example, how to embed it into glass, how to make sure that it's available for building applications. So bendable solar can maybe make solar tiles so that you can't tell that those big solar panels, but actually embed it into your home. Same thing with siding, same thing with glass. In fact, Patagonia announced that they were putting solar generation into the glass on their headquarters. Those are really cool technologies. That's an aside. Okay, next. We want to make sure that you take off money from the ability to install storage at home when the sun isn't shining. 30% off of the cost of installing battery storage as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act. Similarly, we want to make sure that people have access to heat pumps. How many of you guys have a heat pump? Have a heat pump? A few? Know about heat pumps? A lot of people, and people in the South know about heat pumps, but a lot of people across the country don't. Their heat pump is a lousy expression because it does heating and cooling together. They're about 45% more efficient, and there's going to be all these rebates that are coming your way in the fall through the state, funded by the federal government, to be able to take money for low-income, particularly families, off of heat pumps. Word is getting out right now. Heat pump sales are outselling gas furnaces, which is for the first time. And the amount of money, the costs, you can take 30% off the cost of heat pumps up to $2,000 right now and through 2032. And with a heat pump and a heat pump water heater, you can save about $650 per year. We're also providing rebates for induction stoves. How many of you have an induction stove? Few of you. How many of you know about induction stoves? Few more. Okay. So these are really cool because these are magnetic coils. They interact with the pot. They heat your water up twice as fast. And by the way, if you have a little one, they're actually safe. You can put your hand on it and it won't burn. So it's safe, doesn't have any pollutants as well, and it is incredibly efficient. And again, we'll see also we have $9 billion through the Inflation Reduction Act to invest in low and moderate income families for rebates. A single household, for example, can get $840 for an induction stove, which means, according to Consumer Reports, that you can just have to pay a couple $100 for a top-level stove if you qualify for that. All of this is to say, so much going on savings. And speaking of savings, of course, electric vehicles are top of the list. So, I don't know, who has a gas-powered vehicle? Who filled up their car this week? What'd you fill it? What'd you pay? $38 to fill up? Anybody pay more than that? Like 65, you got a big car? Yeah. I'm just saying, you could save, depending on how much you use it, $40 with every home charge instead of filling up at a gas station. And that would be about $900 a year if you filled up every other week, right? If you filled up every week, it's double that. $600 a year saved on maintenance. So just saying, electric vehicles are really much more affordable to operate and maintain. But you ask, they're expensive. Who can afford to buy an electric vehicle? Well, here's a couple of examples of electric vehicles that are really well within, new electric vehicles that are within your basic new vehicle range, $27,000, $26,000. You take $7,500 off of this MSRP, now that becomes really affordable for a lot of people, right? So the bottom line is, it's not just new cars, it's also used cars. You can get $4,000 off a used car as well. Kicker is they got to be made in the United States, and that's why we have those. So what does that mean? They're made in the United States, you get these incentives. Doesn't that incentivize the automakers to move production to the United States? Yes? You bet it does. If you calculate all of the savings, $2,000 off a heat pump, $7,500 off a solar install, et cetera, a family could save $18,000 on the equipment, and then over $3,000 annually in just the maintenance and the usage of the equipment by reducing the energy use. So lots of savings embedded. I have this up here. If you have your phone, you can, and if you want to get the updates on when these rebates are coming out, you can take a picture of this. What are those called? That scan thing? Yes, a QR code. Thank you. This is a boomer here. A QR code, and it will allow you to sign up. This is from the Department of Energy. No spam or anything coming to you, just if you want to know when the updates are for getting rebates and what the time frame are. Because the rebates are not available yet. They will be available in the fall, again, once we make it as smooth as possible for people to be able to get the rebates at the point of sale. Okay, saving money. This part about creating jobs is really important, because we do not want to see other countries manufacturing the means for our energy. And so this slide right here is a slide about about batteries and where the batteries are made, including the full supply chain for the batteries. All the red here are China. And this is mining, material processing, cell components, battery cells, and EVs. Anode, cathode, separator material, electrolyte, up to this point has largely been made and processed, the materials for it, in China. That's why all the red. The little blue there, that's the US, up to this point. However, with these incentives, we are turning the corner. We are bending this trend to be able to get the manufacturing, the full supply chain in the United States. And that is the whole point. This is why the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Investing in America agenda, is going to create 1 million jobs every year for the next 10 years, because we're bringing all of this back to the United States, which is, for me, super exciting. This is the ceremony where the president signed it. Everybody's, and this is the battery investments that we are seeing as a result of this policy. As a result of this policy, for those of you who are public policy majors or gurus, hey, policy works. We're seeing the benefit of it right now. Check out this map. All of these dots are battery manufacturing and supply chain investments that have been announced since the president took office. Big chunk of them since the passage of these laws. This was all happening largely in other countries, and now happening in the United States. 160, actually we have a new map that is not up here. It's actually 170 new battery manufacturing or supply chain companies coming. And you're seeing a lot of it right here in Georgia. In fact, the reason why we're on this trip is because the South is becoming the new battery belt. And I say this as the former governor of Michigan, a little envious. However, you see, we've got a bunch of ours up here as well. You're not the only one, but there's enough to go around. That's my point, is that this whole area is becoming a huge job creation machine in clean energy. If you see this, it's happening in all of these states, but to give you an example of what's happening, oh shoot, I thought I had a slide that listed all of the ones that were coming to Georgia, but anyway, the bottom line is you got 21 companies in the battery supply chain that have announced that they are coming to Georgia, $28 billion worth of investment that would not have been there, but for the fact that these incentives make the U.S. so irresistible. And that's very exciting. The South building the most vibrant EV and battery hub in the U.S. EV market share in Southeast doubles as the industry brings $33 billion to the region. South fast becoming America's industrial heartland. Don't forget about us. And Georgia becoming a hub for electric vehicle production. Right? Oh, here's the list of these companies that have said in all over Georgia that are coming because they're building the guts to the electric vehicle or the electric vehicle themselves. Pretty exciting. Y'all should feel very proud of this, right? Pretty exciting. All right, last 2 slides. I'm telling you, the pace of change is happening so fast. Just as an example, this is a street in New York City in 1900, all horse and buggy. Can you spot the car? Probably not. It's right there. That's the car. 13 years later, same street. Can you spot the horse? It's right there. Pace of change. And what does it mean? Imagine how big clean energy industries are going to be in 13 years. Imagine how much stronger our economy is going to grow and how many good paying jobs we're going to create. It's all going to be happening here because we are going to lead the world. All right, over to you guys. Oh yeah, bring up. You're in the middle? I don't know. Are you in the middle?
You get the center, Megan. Well, first I want to say what a delight and honor it is for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to co-host this panel with Georgia Tech. And before a packed crowd, it's so important for us to hear from our leaders, especially over significant economic policies that are changing the face of not just our state, but our entire nation. So thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for coming. Secretary, I want to start this with you, but I also want to open up to the rest of the panel because every single dot you mentioned up there represented hundreds, even thousands of jobs. Drew and the AJC's business team seem to be writing about another major economic development deal involving clean energy or electric vehicles every week. But of course, that comes with job and training. So how does the government, whether it be city government or federal government, prepare for this expanded workforce that has to be skilled in high-tech manufacturing and other jobs for this new clean energy economy?
Yeah, let me just give you one example of how, and of course, we want these jobs. This administration is very pro-union. We'd love for them to be union jobs because we just released a jobs report today, and the union employers are twice as successful in finding skilled workers than the non-union employers who are, 50% of whom, 49% of whom are saying that they're having difficulty finding skilled workers. Unions can be a great ally in brokering skill and providing the apprenticeships, et cetera. But embedded in the way we are administering, for example, the grants out of DOE for this, is that we are requiring community benefit agreements, and the community benefit agreements means that you have to work with the community, including a workforce strategy, so that the community itself is helping to build these products. And the grants, the funding opportunities are being graded based upon how robust those plans are. 20% of the project is evaluated on that. And then the second thing I will say is that the president is really focused on making sure that all communities benefit from this manufacturing resurgence. And one of the things that is super exciting about the way the tax credits are built is that they're stackable. And when I say that, so just say you're a solar solar developer and you decide you want to do a project with multifamily housing in a disadvantaged community. So you get a 30% tax credit to start. If you're doing it in a multifamily housing in a disadvantaged community, you get another potential 20% on top of it, so that's a 50% tax credit. If you use domestic content, that's another 10%, so you get now a 60% tax credit on this project. That makes it irresistible to ensure that communities are brought along, both on workforce as well as these investments being located in those communities.
Mayor, from a city level.
Yeah, well, first, is my mic on? Can you hear me? It says on-ish.
Ish, you're good. I think you're good. Can you hear him in the back?
Can you hear me in the back? You can hear me? Okay, well, first of all, I would take your class any day. You were awesome. I was watching you.
She's a tough grader, though.
I am.
I said
It's
I
true.
take the class. I didn't say I passed the class. But so I view all of this in 4 ways. One is this is about reducing the energy burden for people. 2 is making sure that we have clean energy. 3 is this is economic development at its finest. But 4 is a workforce development plan. This is a jobs generator, a jobs plan. And so we're taking advantage of it here in Atlanta with the Inflation Reduction Act. Billions of dollars are being distributed across America, and some are right here in Atlanta. And we have already started with our young folks. At APS, we have an Atlanta Career and College Academy, and we just about 2 months ago with my Chief Sustainability Officer, we announced a program to train these young people on how to repair electric vehicles, but also how to begin starting to install electric chargers, electric vehicle chargers. And so we are already on our way to making sure that they have a career path and a pipeline towards what we know is coming in the now and the future. We had a Chevy Bolt is what they're utilizing.
Chevy Bolt?
Bolt. To be able to practice or study on, to be able to learn this technology. So that's in place right here in our city for a course that young folks are training on so that we can prepare our workforce. And then we're going to have even more training and preparation across this state. I mean, this is the biggest state for EV production right now. And batteries. Yeah, is it?
Almost.
Almost?
What is?
We say it. Michigan?
Michigan?
Yes, of course.
Of course it's Michigan.
Battery production. But yeah.
And from your perspective as a national climate change advisor, I mean,
You know, the Secretary mentioned this. We've really coded into the tax code the demand signal for the programs that the mayor's talking about. So, you know, you've got employers, you've got unions, you've got state and local organizations who are training up folks through pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. If you want the full value of the tax credits the Secretary talked about, you got to have 10% of your labor hours from folks in apprenticeships. Otherwise, you only get 20% of the tax credit. So there's a 5x difference between folks who are employing people from these apprenticeship programs and not. And it's the way we think about it is in the same way we're investing in our supply chain for steel that's sourced in America, our supply chain for chips that are sourced in America, for batteries that are sourced in America. We can't be in the business of just skimming the skilled workers that we have now. We've got to be growing the field. And growing the field, of course, means bringing in young people, bringing in women, bringing in minorities that have, frankly, been excluded from moments of economic boom in the past. So that's, I think, thing number one. The second thing is the place-based aspect of the way the economic development is taking place. So in West Virginia, the example is Weirton, where the Secretary's been. Used to be a steel factory, now is a factory manufacturing batteries. Where I grew up, since we're doing states, Pennsylvania, there was Bethlehem Steel created a factory 100 years ago that had been shuttered as jobs went overseas. Now they're manufacturing those solar trackers, largest clean energy IPO of last year. And here in Dalton, where they used to be the sofa manufacturing capital of the world, you all are manufacturing the solar panels we need. There's a real intentionality in going to these places that have been left behind as the economy's transformed over the last several decades. We get to tap into the assets that are in these communities, even if economic opportunities have been left behind. And one of those critical assets is the people who are trained up, they're ready, they are fired up to get and be a part of building the climate solutions we need. So it's coding it into the tax code, but it's also about the places we go to try to generate this opportunity.
Can I just jump on one thing? 75% of the jobs that are created in this clean energy sector do not require a 4-year degree. So there, opportunity abounds for all skill levels.
And a quick
Green
follow-up,
jobs, blue-collar jobs.
and a quick follow-up before Drew's question is, while we're talking about workforce development, there are students in this room who are pursuing 4-year degrees and plus. What advice do you have for them about this new green energy ecosystem we're building?
I think we don't fully appreciate where all the jobs are going to be. I think that's thing number one. And hopefully one of the things people took away from the Secretary's presentation is that we have the ability to win the entire finish line here in the United States. And so it's capturing everything from the input materials and the supply chain through the digital assets that are going to be able to help us harness these energy tools more effectively and aggressively. And then it's building the stuff that we will need to keep decarbonizing. So, one of the goals that the Secretary talked about is this goal we have for 2030, which is to reduce 50 to 52% of our emissions nationwide by 2030. Well, that next 50% is going to be pretty hard. And to get that done, we've got to have solutions in every sector of the economy. No sector can be too hard to decarbonize. And that means steel, cement, aluminum, all of that getting built cleaner going into the future. So we're excited about that.
Department of Energy, we are hiring all you engineers. We've got 100,000 scientists working to solve the toughest problems of our time. We have a whole clean energy core that we are hiring up to do just that. So save the planet, make some money, come to DOE.
Bring your resume.
There you go.
Secretary, another EV-related question for you. Surveys show that more consumers than ever before are considering an EV for their next vehicle, but a lot of them still have lingering concerns. The range, the cost, the charging infrastructure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're traveling in an EV as part of this road trip. I'm just curious what that's been like. I hope you haven't had any issues, but has it informed you at all about what we need to do to get to this fully electric?
Well, I have an EV at home too, so I'm very familiar, but one of the reasons we're doing this road trip is to show people that, you can travel across the country and be able to charge up. Most of the EVs now have an app. They can tell you where the charging stations are, whether they're full or not, but even part of this Investing in America agenda is to address the issue of range anxiety. So we have $7.5 billion that, again, we've distributed to states. That $7.5 billion is to put 500,000 EV charging stations across the country. The first tranche of the funding goes toward transportation corridors. So your freeways, your highways, et cetera. The charging stations are supposed to be 50 miles apart and not more than 1 mile off the freeway, so that it's accessible and app-enabled, so that you can see whether it's there, whether it is available for you to use. There's got to be multiple ports per charging station. And then the second round of funding is to go where the private sector has not gone. We have thousands and thousands of charging stations across the country, but they go to places where EVs already are. We're trying to solve for getting EVs into places where they are not now, and a lot of that is because people are saying, I don't have a place to charge up. So the second round of funding for this amount is to go to rural areas and to go to urban areas where people don't have garages, where we want to be able to make visible these charging stations. Maybe you pull it down from a lamppost on the street. Maybe there are multiple ways to ensure that they're in the Circle K lots, or the Walmart's already got a whole bunch of them. We just charged at a Walmart yesterday. But the bottom line is we want them to be ubiquitous as a gas station is, and that's what the strategy is. So over the next 12 months, you're going to start to see them pop up all over Georgia.
Mayor, you travel mostly in an electric
got that
vehicle.
Rivian.
One of the ways to make sure this happens is start with leadership. The city of Atlanta, we are putting our efforts right into the mayor's office. So I have an electric vehicle right outside. There's a Rivian that I'm driven around in that we go throughout the whole city. It gets about 300 miles between charges, and so I did not charge yesterday just to be able to, when I got here today, to be able to let you guys know that you can get around the city of Atlanta for 2-3 days, going to and from work, to and from lots of activities. I go about 7 to 8 places a day. And so to come over that, to overcome that range anxiety that people have, we have a Rivian. It's an SUV. It's fantastic. It shows you on the app or on the screen where the upcoming charging stations are, if we should need it. Plenty of space. It has a third row. I'm not advertising. I'm just letting you know.
I get a ride home.
People coming in the
But I'm a
back
tall
seat.
guy, and I needed a lot of space, and so we have that. It has all the bells and whistles that are necessary, and so the other part of this is to make sure that we have a lot of charging stations and part of the city's fleet. We have 74 electric vehicles in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta's fleet. So again, we are electrifying our fleet, and then we have about 200 EV charging stations across the cities, whether that's the parks and recs, City Hall, various places that you can go. The world's busiest airport has charging stations, and 95% of the charging stations that we have are accessible to the public. And so that's one of the ways that we're utilizing the power of our utilization of electric vehicles to make sure that other people see, hey, we can get there, and you never see me at a gas pump anymore. And so maybe that can happen broadly across the public.
And just on charging, I think it's such a critical element of this, which is why the goal the president set of deploying 500,000 chargers during his time in office is such an important one. But you don't have to go back too far to understand where people are coming from on range anxiety. But think about this. In the Biden administration, just in 2.5 years, we've doubled the number of chargers, right, already on the road to 150,000. And a report that the Department of Energy did that just came out earlier this week shows that we will double 3 times more by 2030. That's a lot of difference in terms of what folks could expect just a couple of years ago and what they can expect now. And in terms of cost, again, the transformation is remarkable. The Secretary showed the MSRP and how that's changing. But if you look underneath the hood of that, battery costs over the last decade have come down about 90%, and the battery range has basically doubled or tripled on the average model, 2 times more models on the road today than when President Biden took office. So the availability, the accessibility, and the affordability is just incomparable relative to just a few years ago, which is why we met with EV Noir and some of these groups here that are operating in Atlanta that are getting the word out. That's absolutely critical because the data's changing and folks can expect a lot more now.
Secretary, I have to get political with you because it's my job. But yes, but also open up to the mayor, Mr. Zadie. But yesterday, Governor Brian Kemp traveled to a battery manufacturing site in Bainbridge that would benefit from green energy incentives from the Biden administration. And he also declared when he was down there that the boom in Georgia is a product more of state-level policies than the federal initiatives that you've been talking about, such as the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you respond to that Republican messaging, which might end up as a template for other Republican governors around the state and other Republican policymakers as they're running for office next year?
Well, obviously, these jobs are being created all over the country. So, but we encourage states to add on to the incentives that the president has signed into law. I will say this, having been a governor and tried with everything I had to put incentive after incentive on the table, I used to say that it was like bringing a knife to a gunfight in the sense that other countries were putting so many incentives for making themselves irresistible that the only way that we could really compete for manufacturing jobs was if we had a federal partner. And now we are not bringing a gun, we are bringing a bazooka to this gunfight, and every state is benefiting. So I understand the tendency of a governor to say, oh, it's all on me. But really, it's on all of us, and we are all benefiting from this Invest in America agenda.
But to Republicans, including the former president, Donald Trump, who was in Georgia just a few weeks ago, saying that first day in office, he would want to repeal these incentives.
Okay, well then, what are you going to do? You're going to tell all these communities that have been celebrating, all the people that have been hired, that's just not going to happen. I mean, once you get steel in the ground, once communities start to hire people, you're not going to undo 10 years worth of tax credits when companies have relied upon the promise of being able to get those. I think, let's just try to throw all the politics out. The reality is, on the ground, we now have policy to make sure that we can manufacture stuff in America again and be competitive globally. And that is really a good thing for the United States.
And look, clean energy is a team sport, and I mean that in a bunch of different ways. But the first is, you're not going to get folks to locate a battery factory in a country that's not manufacturing the vehicles. And you're not going to get the vehicle factory to locate in the country that's not creating demand for those vehicles. And you're not going to get the demand for those vehicles if you're not building out the infrastructure to support those vehicles. That's why the Investing in America agenda is so critical, because it takes that full view and recognizes that we need to create the full market conditions to have the capital formation take place in the way it's taking place. So thing number one is, any notion that we could just produce one of these widgets and not have a full transformation, a full Investing in America strategy is, I think, doesn't add up if you just talk to the CEOs who are pioneering these companies. That's thing number one. Thing number two is, these policies are massively complementary. And it's not just the tax policies, it's the regulatory policies setting rules of the road for where we need to go over time. That creates the certainty around which folks will invest. And we've been in this debate in Washington where you got folks in the GOP-controlled House of Representatives that have been trying to repeal these very policies. And the conversation I have with them is, you're looking at this Jenga tower that for the first time is standing tall, right? And we're attracting investment in the United States, we're growing jobs, we're taking charge of our energy future. We're going to start pulling those blocks out. It's going to fall apart. And maybe there's one that you could pull out, but we don't have assurance that all of those are not critical to the structural integrity of us moving forward as quickly as we need to. So that's why, we don't have a sign up here that says, solar production tax credit brought to you by Joe Biden. It's the whole Investing in America agenda, and that includes the workers that support this transformation.
Mayor, and you're involved in economic development recruitment from a ground level every single day. What impact do these incentives have?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're pretty clear that the Biden administration did a thing. All right, this Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, we benefit from that, and I think that everybody can take credit. You don't get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If I brought the peanut butter and you brought the jelly, that's how we get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You got to both the federal, state, the corporations take it all, and thus we get the benefit to be able to bring about this change that we want to see. And so I think that it's a bad notion when we take credit and don't credit others for what they've been doing. So I applaud all for their involvement in making sure this happens, because the cities, we benefit from this stuff. Our workforce, our economic development, all these things happen. We're getting cleaner. Our lives are getting better. So the quality of life improvements that are coming from the hard work that's going into this, we're all reaping the benefits of it. So I think that to proliferate this further, everyone needs to be identified as getting the proper credit.
And Secretary, a quick follow-up, because as you know, it's a very tense issue here among Georgia Republicans who have specifically raised concerns that vehicles made by Hyundai, which is building a $5.5 billion plant in Southeast Georgia, right now would not qualify because their models are still being built overseas. That plant is set to be done by 2025. But are you in favor of allowing vehicles built overseas to qualify for those tax credits sooner, if those companies are actively working to bring manufacturing to the U.S.?
That's the whole point of these tax credits, is to incentivize bringing that supply chain back. And Treasury guidance has been they've been tough, but they've been very clear. And the whole point is to create demand on the part of consumers. So if you have a $7,500 tax credit at your disposal, you're going to spend it on cars that qualify. And the ones that qualify are the ones that are made in the U.S., not just the shell, but the battery themselves. And so that's what this is all about. It's a little bit of tough love at the beginning, but ultimately that's the reason why we're seeing all of these announcements, is because everybody wants to be able to qualify for that full credit. And that's why it's all being brought back to the United States.
So the tough love at the beginning is basically
that there's some that won't qualify for the full amount. So maybe they'll qualify. I had a part of my slide up there had $3,500. Maybe you don't qualify for the full amount at first, but bring the rest of it home. And those who are saying, well, we shouldn't be moving to electric vehicles because China's making all of the batteries. That's the whole point, is that we want to bring all of that back. And so we want to make it in the United States, and that's why those incentives are so rich.
Shift gears a little bit and talk about nuclear energy. As I'm sure you're aware, we have a plant here near Augusta that any day now, hopefully, will be bringing a new unit online. The first one that we built from scratch in the country in, I believe, more than 3 decades. One of your predecessors, I believe, went to that site early in the process and declared that it would make nuclear cool again. But the project has been dogged by billions in cost overruns, delays. Do you think the Plant Vogtle project will ultimately help or hurt the future of nuclear in this country?
I think it'll definitely help. I think it'll definitely help. We believe that nuclear power is part of the future. I know because it was the first built in decades that there were glitches along the way, but the bottom line is nuclear comes in a lot of forms. Could be small modular reactors, could be micro reactors. Nuclear could be paired with clean hydrogen, for example, to create energy. We think that nuclear is really important. It's one of the reasons why the Biden administration has spent money to keep existing nuclear fleets online, as well as incentivize the building of new nuclear. Now, we have to do some more streamlining on the regulatory side to make it a little bit easier to make that happen, especially these small modular reactors. I can tell you that globally, there is a huge desire for American technology to have other countries have that clean baseload power. We have the gold standard in the United States of nuclear regulatory gold standard in the sense that it is so safe. And we can do it a little bit more in a more streamlined way as well. But I'm super excited as well about the next generation of nuclear, which is fusion. And that the president has a decadal view, meaning a 10-year view of when we can see commercial fusion. And for those of you who aren't following, nuclear power, fusion is where you pull 2 atoms or atomic particles together to be able to get more energy out of that fusion reaction than what it took to put it together, to put into that reaction. Fission is where you're splitting atomic particles. The fission is what you see in the big plants right now. That's what the Vogtle plant will be. And that kind of nuclear power creates waste. Fusion does not create any nuclear waste. And so that's why everybody has been so eager to go after fusion, because it is like the Holy Grail if we can get there to replicate what is happening in the stars and the sun here on Earth in a safe way.
Allie, do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
I'd just say that the Investing in America agenda includes in it what the Secretary said, life extension investments to maintain the fleet we've got, new tax credits and investments to help support the build-out of small modular and the next generation of reactors, and then also money to build out the fuel supply for nuclear here in the United States. So we're looking at every form of energy that can help us hit our climate targets and aggressively trying to advance that.
Just one quick follow. I believe there are no new orders on the books, correct, for new nuclear units, once Vogtle is complete. Does that
Not the AP1000s here,
right.
But overseas there are.
Right, but in the U.S.,
Yeah.
does that concern you? And what needs to happen to kick
Well, in the
Everybody
U.S.,
watch
there are a number of utilities now that are pursuing advanced reactors. In Wyoming, where there was once a coal plant that's now retired, they're now developing an advanced reactor to take place and leverage the grid components that are available at that site. The Tennessee Valley Authority is advancing greenfield small modular reactors, and companies like Duke and Southern are, I think, hopefully going to be fast followers in that space, if not leaders as well.
A little twist on Drew's question, but what lessons do you think the nuclear industry and the government, the federal government, has learned from Vogtle, being the long-running saga that Drew mentioned?
Yeah, I think there are lessons that abound from that. And it's one of the reasons why our allies across the world are waiting to see what happens at Vogtle. Nobody wants to be the first. Everybody wants to be, maybe the 7th to learn from the mistakes. And so when you haven't built something in 3 decades, there's going to be things that you've got to make sure are cleared up. And I think that's the lesson is they've learned an awful lot, and I think it will make it easier for communities to consider it. It certainly is making it easier for our allies to consider it overseas.
We have
The big nuclear ones, not the advanced ones that Ali was just referring to.
Although we have some audience questions coming soon that we have as a list. But I do really want to ask you this question because I've been excited to ask you this question for a while. You've said that President Biden has insisted that the narrative about climate change should be one not of doom and gloom and disastrous weather events and other catastrophes, but about new possibilities for Americans. So explain what that means and how you get beyond the ominous and worrisome implications of climate change to present a more optimistic vision of what it could mean for the U.S.
Well, I feel like Secretary Granholm did a great job of talking about the hope and possibilities. But look, we are so often, I think, stuck in this cycle, and the news reports oftentimes the sky turning orange, the smoke that we breathe into our lungs, the drought that's parching our farms and our ranches, the hurricanes that threaten our coastlines. And the reality is, things are bad, and they're getting worse because of atmospheric content of CO2, concentration of CO2. And we've got to speak very clearly about that, right? It is the uncontrolled combustion of fossil fuels that puts this into the sky, and we've got to get our act together on it. But all of that cannot be a sort of the flashing red of a stop sign. It's got to be the spur to move faster and further. And hopefully what folks are taking away is there is a lot of good news if we get serious and tackle the climate crisis. And it's good news not just for the environment, which is important, but also good news for our economy, good news for our families, and good news for the issues, frankly, that we've neglected for a really long time in our society. You think about something like our historic and racist housing policy. We redlined communities here in the United States. Those communities are literally hotter today because there's more pavement and fewer trees. The Inflation Reduction Act plants trees in those communities. We had a racist transportation policy that split neighborhoods by building highways through the middle of them. Today, thanks to the president's investment agenda, we are reconnecting those communities. So if we succeed on tackling the climate crisis, we will not only be getting past the gloom and doom, we will be staring at the hope and possibilities, not just for our environment, for our economies, for our families, but for the fundamentals of our society, making it more safe, more fair, more inclusive, a place for everyone. So that's what I get fired up about every day, is not just tackling climate, but using this agenda to tackle all of the bad stuff that we've put in the closet, pushed off for another day. This is our moment to do that.
And Mayor, how do you communicate that message to your constituents here in Atlanta?
Yeah, so we're doing it by highlighting all the benefits that are coming from the Inflation Reduction Act and all the things that we're getting across the Biden administration. Thinking about connecting communities, we just received $25 million from the US DOT to finalize the connection of the Beltline loop.
Yes,
so that's going to be amazing, right? So when we talk about communities that have been left behind or communities that have been split apart by highways, now we're reconnecting those communities through the Beltline and through other means of connection that is coming from these partnerships with the White House. And so that's one way, but also you think about, we joined also the Justice 40 with the Biden administration and said that we want to make sure that you invest 40% of the benefit. 40% of the benefit that comes from these activities and investments have to go to disadvantaged communities. And so that's important to us because, we have a tale of two cities like many cities. We have a city that has a portion that's thriving and a portion that has challenges that we're trying to overcome. And so part of this electrification, we're not just putting it in the communities where right now the electric vehicles are. We're putting it in communities where the electric vehicles aren't, where actually they don't have vehicles at all. And so as we are going to now have these MSRPs that she mentioned, where $7,000, $7,500 reduction, that's going to be news to communities of color, disadvantaged communities that can now benefit from that. And their first vehicle may be an electric vehicle, and there will be an electric vehicle charging station at the parks and recreation and other areas across this city of Atlanta. So we're putting the dollars to work and the workforce behind it so that not only are we inviting people in the community to do these jobs for us, no, we're trying to make sure that the people in these communities are able to take advantage of these job opportunities because this is indeed a jobs plan.
Secretary?
I just want to say, I just love mayors. And there's another one in the back
Mitch.
there. Mitch Landrieu, who was the mayor of New Orleans and is now part of the White House team, making sure that we are spending this money, that it is spending it in the right way. And he's in charge of all of the funds coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So if any of you have a complaint,
If you have a pothole,
And you were just down in Metter, Georgia today, weren't you? So you came up pretty quick.
Right.
So we have some questions from.
Well, actually,
sorry.
I did want to say,
Yeah, do
that's a unique thing. A lot of dollars go straight to states, and I know we have a former governor here, but a lot of dollars in the past have gone to states. They were wise in saying, how can cities have access to some of these resources? I know Mitch and Mayor Bottoms and others that are in the White House or were in the White House are saying, can we get this money down to cities? Because mayors can deploy those resources a lot faster. So I thank you all for that, because now the dollars are coming right into our hands, and we're able to utilize it quickly and in the right places that they need to go.
Well, now we have a round of questions we got from folks in the community and in the audience. This first question is from Dana Redden. I don't know if Dana's here, but it's along those same lines. Oh, there's Dana. It is, how will minority-owned businesses be supported and included in this just transition?
well, let me jump off of this notion that 40% of the benefits have to go to communities that have been either fence-line communities, communities that have been left behind, communities, as Ali notes, that have been bisected. All of the agencies inside of the federal government, and I can certainly speak for the Department of Energy, we have a total focus on making sure that the benefits do go to communities that we want to take advantage of this, and that we are measuring where the funding is being spent. We are grading these applicants based upon whether they're involving the community in disadvantaged communities. We're trying to embed structural equity into a system that has been structurally unequal. And that's why I think every agency inside the federal government, starting with the president, whose first executive order that he signed was Justice 40, to make sure that it's not just the communities, but it's the small businesses as well, who can take advantage of the whole supply chains that are being created here, bringing them to the table, making sure they're part of the community benefits plans that all of us are executing.
in addition to investing in the specific entities, right, making sure that we're upping our ambition for minority-owned small businesses, we're also investing in that broader ecosystem. So through the Inflation Reduction Act, we have dollars that are going to environmental justice NGOs, the community-based organizations that feed into this economic system. That's incredibly important. The second is to the workforce training part of this. Today in Vermont, Administrator Regan of the EPA launched a Solar for All grant competition, $7 billion. Embedded in that is support for communities and for workforce training that's targeted at folks who wouldn't otherwise show up in the solar workforce. So that's absolutely critical. And then the third is the way we've structured the tax code itself. So there is a structural advantage in this set of tax provisions for folks who are nonprofits, churches, schools, entities without tax liability for the first time actually get a better tax deal when they're deploying solar, when they're deploying storage. That's, I think, going to help generate wealth in communities that for a long time been looked out and left behind.
And one other thing is we have a program here called Weatherize. And this is, as you showed, those 3 or 4 communities that you went to recently where individuals are saving money by getting solar panels or saving money by just weatherizing their homes to be able to improve their energy efficiency of their HVAC. Those programs that we have are also targeted at utilizing minority installers and laborers, et cetera, to be able to bring those about and to be intentional about making sure. I mean, a lot of the people that have older homes, leaky windows, and old non-efficient HVAC units are people that are, low income or on the margins. And so this plan, when we have these investments that's coming out of this Inflation Reduction Act and other incentives, are allowing us to be able to go to communities of color and utilize small businesses to do those installs. And that's money in their pocket.
And the bipartisan infrastructure law just gave $2.5 billion more dollars for that. You're going to see more money coming your way.
And by the way, the union piece is a critical element of all this. Secretary this morning issued a jobs analysis for last year, and we found that union shops are twice as likely to invest in DEI programs, building those pathways for workers from diverse backgrounds. And we don't just have to look at the numbers. We heard from President Brooks of the AFL-CIO just earlier today at the IBEW Hall. That is a big focus for the IBEW, for the AFL, for UA, here in Georgia. So unions are going to be our partners in making sure that the wealth opportunity, the opportunity to lift people into the middle class, is a promise kept.
Yeah, so this one was submitted by Costco Jones. How can we ensure the workforce of the electrification movement are paid livable wages?
Well, so a couple of things. One is that we are evaluating these community benefit agreements based upon whether they're paying prevailing wage, whether they're abiding by the Davis-Bacon Act. So you've got to do that, and you get credit for that. And so that's super important. But it's another reason why, as I was saying here earlier, the president really, really wants these to be good jobs. And not just, and when I say good jobs, I'm talking about jobs that you can raise a family on, jobs that will provide you with some security in your old age, jobs that will provide you with health care, good jobs. And one of the best ways to do that, of course, is to make sure that they're union jobs. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of private sector players who do that as well, but union workforce and union employers, you are likely to be guaranteed to have jobs that are a livable wage. We can't insist upon that by law, but we are doing everything we can to uplift and make it easier, at least for certainly people to be paid prevailing wage.
This next question is from Marvin Lim. I don't know if Marvin's in the room. He's a newly elected Democratic lawmaker. It's how does the Department of Energy plan to bridge the gap to get resources to those disadvantaged communities who might most need those resources, but don't themselves have the resources to proactively and sufficiently navigate federal bureaucracy to access those resources?
Right.
It's a question you get a lot of.
Yeah, it is a question we get a lot. Thank you for the question. That's one of the reasons why the EPA did what they did today to help empower and finance for community organizations across the country, the ability to help break down some of the technical barriers. If you went to the Department of Energy and applied for a funding opportunity announcement in the past, and even some today, we're working on this, it is way too bureaucratic. It is way too hard to get to. And I don't like getting applause for that. But it is. We recognize it. And so, do you really need to have a 200-page application for this? I don't think we do. And so we are going about trying to streamline all of this. In fact, we have identified a new way, particularly for grants that are appealing to community organizations that don't have the lawyers, et cetera, to go and do these complicated applications, to instead submit a concept paper to see whether we can take it to the next step, and then streamline the follow-on application so that it is truly an easy way to access the federal resources rather than having to have you hire a lawyer just to write a grant.
Let me brag on Secretary Granholm for a second, give you two examples of things that the agency is doing. One is she's created this Pathfinders program within the Grid Development Office. So we've got to modernize our grid. We've got to expand the heck out of it and plug in a bunch more resources to help decarbonize. Right now, you can now call folks at the Grid Deployment Office at the Department of Energy, and you can get a Pathfinder who helps you find the right program to tap into to lift up your grid and modernize it into the next century and prepare it for a clean energy future. The Department of Energy also, for tribes, got together all the registered tribes around the country and had a essentially speed dating session with every member of the federal government who has resources to help tribes tap into different parts of the clean energy economy, is helping do that. But it's not just DOE. The Department of Agriculture is using its network of every state's got their USDA officer. That group and the Extension Service are helping people tap into the climate smart agriculture opportunity. Thanks to that, we now have 60,000 farms, 25 million acres of land across the country that are tapped into climate smart agriculture practices just in the last 2.5 years because of the Extension Service and the partnership work that folks at the Department of Agriculture are doing. And the exciting piece of this is we now also have a lot of folks in civil society who are helping people take advantage of all of these investments. Philanthropic dollars are flowing into organizations like Habitat for Humanity, which is now teamed up with Grid Alternatives and is helping folks not only get housed, but get housed into net zero homes. So this is going to be everybody showing up to the table with all the tools that they've got.
Can I just jump in on this? Thank you for reminding me, because we've reorganized the Department of Energy around all of these deployment efforts. We've largely been a science agency up to this point, right? 17 national labs, all of that. But we're now a deployment agency. And so Rose Datto is one of the folks who is leading our State and Community Energy Programs Office. So we now are actually having boots on the ground across the country to help with technical assistance for communities and entities that want to be able to access our programs. So we're excited about this new vector for us. It's a new thing, but Rose is kicking butt.
And Mayor, while we're on the topic, what is City Hall doing to break down barriers between folks who need resources but can't deal with the tangle of bureaucracy to get them?
Yeah, so one thing is we have a great office. Our Chief Sustainability Officer is right there. Several of her team members are here, and they're from the community. And we also have a Green Energy Advisory Council. And that council, that commission helps, and several of those members are from energy burdened households or from disadvantaged communities, so that when they're putting in their ideas about how we should deploy our resources, what policies to put in place and how we should go about our business, we're not top down in everything. We're middle in between, ground up, et cetera. So our listening ear, our policy lens comes from the community and how we deploy our resources and go about our business of trying to make sure that we hit our goal of being 100% clean energy by 2035 in the city of Atlanta. That's a goal that we plan to hit, and we're moving fast towards it. And the resources that we're getting right now from the DOE and other parts of this administration are very helpful.
This question is from Tasher Sanders. She wrote, she's concerned about frontline and fence line communities and the energy burden they face. So I was curious how those communities are centered in these programs.
You want to do it, Al?
Sure. One of the first grant programs that we started to implement under the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it was literally the first grant dollars that went out from the EPA, was to get air monitoring out to fence line and frontline communities. Part one of solving the problem is measuring it, understanding it, and being aggressive in trying to solve it. The second is, and I know we've been talking about the investment part of the agenda, but I think the regulatory part of our agenda is really important as well. Setting clear rules of the road for soot and for smog, for the tailpipe emissions that come out of cars and trucks and heavy-duty vehicles, helping curb the emissions that are coming out of our power plants and our industrial facilities is critical to making sure that folks who live on the fence line and on the front lines of polluting facilities can literally breathe easier. But a lot of what we've talked about today are the sort of broad-based transformations that we want to see, right? The broad-based transformation we want to see on the grid, solar, wind, storage, and so on. In addition to those broad-based transformations, we actually have very targeted place-based efforts as well. So take, for example, the port electrification push that's part of the Investing in America agenda that we are implementing, and Georgia is going to be a big part of it, helping get rid of the idling and the diesel pollution that port communities have to deal with. Helping electrify and deal with the concentrated pollutions in certain rail corridors. That's part of the Investing in America agenda. So getting after these concentrated pockets, I think, has got to be part of the strategy. We can't just solve for the macro. We've got to appreciate that pollution hits people in disproportionate ways. We've got to have targeted strategies to get after that, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Secretary, we have time for one more question. It's such an important one, so I want to get it in, especially in a state and a region where we are facing a crisis in affordable housing. This is from Adelaide Steedley. I don't know if Adelaide is here. But Georgia's home to some of the largest battery manufacturers in the country. But how can low-income housing providers take advantage of that proximity to lower costs for upgrading energy efficiency in low-income housing in Georgia to make it more affordable?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why these tax credits double up essentially for low-income housing. It's one of the incentives that's available, and that's true. So, for example, if you want to take advantage of making your home more resilient by installing battery charging, you can get not just that 30% tax credit, but there are rebates as well. You can take advantage of all of the rebates I was talking about and completely upgrade your home if you combine the weatherization, whether it's insulation plus new windows plus new doors plus replacing old appliances. I'm guessing this is what they're asking, right? How do you take advantage if you are in a community that might be adjacent to one of these facilities, in addition to getting a job there potentially, but being able to really upgrade your home. And there's all this suite of tools and incentives that will be available starting in the fall. As they say, the rebates that are coming through are being passed to the states, and hopefully they'll be shared locally, or I'm not sure how Georgia is planning on trickling them down. But we were just at a Home Depot this morning, for example, and if I wanted to buy a heat pump at a Home Depot, the ideal way is for me to go and say, I'm qualified to be able to get this rebate and have it taken off the top. So you don't have to mail in a coupon, you don't have to put something on your tax return or anything like that, that you get the price reduced for you at the point of sale. And so for communities that are in low-income areas, this is going to be particularly prime for you because the rebates are particularly generous depending on income. So communities should, and this is partly why we're going to need allies at the state level, at the local level, to be able to get the word out in the fall about how people can take advantage of it.
Secretary, Mayor, Advisor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, Georgia. You're very gracious. Thank you.
Why don't we put Madam Secretary in the middle?
Well, thank you.
Oh, the height.
Yeah.
And just if I can.
Got it? Yes?
All right.
Yes.
Oh,
Great event. Before everyone runs off, I just want to remind everybody there's a reception. We have the place till 3:15. Introduce yourself to 3 people you don't know.
Appreciate it.
It's a great opportunity.
Thank you again. You're awesome. All right.
You're awesome.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Yeah,
I got
you bet.
Thank you.
All right. Good shit.
We're going that way?